I didn't expect presents. I expected a message. Just one message. That's all I wanted for Christmas. My name is Lauren, and I'm 65 years old. I spent Christmas Day alone in my small house in Minneapolis, watching the snow fall outside my window, checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for a text that never came. The silence from my son Liam wasn't what hurt most. What destroyed me was discovering, 3 days after Christmas, exactly why he'd been silent. He hadn't forgotten the holiday. He hadn't been too busy. He'd simply chosen to celebrate without me, and to spend $8,000 on a Hermes Birkin bag for his mother-in-law while I received nothing, not even a text message to say Merry Christmas. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to December 26th, the day after Christmas, when I was still making excuses for the silence, still believing there had to be a reasonable explanation for why my only son hadn't contacted me on the most important family holiday of the year. I woke up that morning with the same hollow feeling I'd gone to bed with. Christmas had passed. Liam hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't acknowledged the day at all. I told myself there must be a reason. Maybe his phone died. Maybe they'd been traveling and had no signal. Maybe Emily, his wife, had family obligations that kept them too busy to reach out. I made these excuses while sitting in my small living room, looking at the tree I'd decorated by myself, the presents I'd wrapped for Liam and Emily that still sat unopened beneath the branches, because they hadn't come to visit as I'd hoped they might. Not that they'd promised to come. They hadn't. But I'd hoped. Is that wrong? To hope your only child might spend Christmas with you? Let me tell you who I was before this happened, because you need to understand that I'm not some demanding mother who expects constant attention. I'm not the type who guilts her children or makes unreasonable demands. I'm Lauren Mitchell. I'm 65 years old. I was an elementary school teacher for 37 years before I retired 5 years ago. I taught second grade at Riverside Elementary in Minneapolis, and I loved every minute of it. I loved the children, loved watching them learn and grow, loved being part of their lives during those formative years. I've been a widow for 8 years. My husband Daniel died of a heart attack when he was only 61 years old. Sudden, devastating, no warning. One moment he was fine. The next he was gone. Liam was 32 when his father died. He took it hard. They'd been close. Daniel had taught him to fish, to fix cars, to be a good man. Losing his father left a hole in Liam's life that I don't think ever fully healed. After Daniel died, it was just Liam and me for a while. We grew closer. He'd call me every Sunday. We'd have lunch together once a week. He'd come over to help with house repairs or yard work. We had a good relationship, a close one. Then, 2 years ago, he met Emily. I was happy for him at first. He'd dated other women, but nothing serious. Emily seemed different. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep, successful and confident. Pretty in a polished way. She came from a well-off family in Edina, one of Minneapolis's wealthiest suburbs. They dated for 6 months before getting engaged. Married a year later. A big wedding at a country club that Emily's parents paid for. It was beautiful, expensive. I wore my best dress and smiled through the whole thing, even though I felt a little out of place among Emily's family and friends, who all seemed to know each other and share inside jokes I wasn't part of. But I was happy for Liam. That's what mothers do. We're happy when our children are happy, even when their happiness means they need us a little less. After the wedding, things changed gradually. So gradually that I didn't fully notice at first. The Sunday phone calls became less frequent. Once a week became every other week, then once a month, then sporadic. Our weekly lunches stopped. Liam was always too busy. Work obligations. Emily had plans. They were traveling. Always something. When I'd suggest getting together, he'd say soon or we'll figure something out. But then weeks would pass without any plans materializing. I tried not to take it personally. Newlyweds need time together. They're building their own life. That's normal and healthy. But by the 2nd year of their marriage, this year, I realized I'd become an afterthought in my son's life. Not someone he actively avoided, but someone he simply didn't prioritize anymore. I saw him maybe once every 2 or 3 months. Always briefly. Always when it was convenient for them. I was never invited to their home. We'd meet for coffee or a quick lunch. Conversations that stayed surface level, Discussions about weather and work, but never anything deeper. And Emily, I barely knew her. She was polite but distant. She'd smile and make small talk, but never anything that felt genuinely warm or interested. I was her husband's mother. A obligatory relationship, not one she'd chosen or invested in. I told myself this was just how things were now. Modern families. Everyone busy. Everyone with their own lives. But there were moments that hurt. Like Thanksgiving, when Liam told me they were spending it with Emily's family. Not that we couldn't all celebrate together, just that they were going to Emily's parents' house and I wasn't invited. Maybe we can see you the weekend after? Liam had suggested. We didn't. He texted the Sunday after Thanksgiving, saying they were exhausted and needed to rest. So when Christmas approached, I didn't have high expectations. I didn't expect them to spend the day with me. I didn't expect expensive gifts or elaborate celebrations. I just wanted a phone call. Or a text. Just some acknowledgement that I existed, that I mattered, that Christmas meant remembering your mother who raised you and loved you and sacrificed for you. Was that too much to ask? Apparently it was. Christmas morning, I woke up early like I always do. Made coffee. Sat by my small tree and looked at the presents I'd wrapped for them. A nice sweater for Liam. A scarf for Emily, both thoughtfully chosen, both wrapped with care. I checked my phone. Nothing. I made breakfast. Checked my phone again. Nothing. The morning passed slowly. I tried to distract myself, watched a Christmas movie, made a nice lunch for myself even though I wasn't particularly hungry, checked my phone constantly. By afternoon, I was making excuses. They're sleeping in. They're busy opening presents. They'll call later. By evening, the excuses became more elaborate. Their phone died. They're traveling with no signal. Maybe they sent a card that got lost in the mail. I went to bed Christmas night with my phone on my nightstand. Volume turned up. Still hoping. Still waiting. Nothing. December 26th, I woke up and immediately checked my phone. Still nothing. That's when the hurt really settled in. When I stopped making excuses and started accepting that my son had chosen not to acknowledge me on Christmas. Not forgotten. Chosen. There's a difference. Forgetting is an accident. A choice is deliberate. But I still didn't understand the full extent of that choice. I wouldn't understand for 3 more days. I spent December 26th trying to decide what to do. Should I call him? Text him? Would that make me look desperate? Would he resent me for guilting him? I didn't want to be that mother. The needy one. The one whose children avoid because she's always complaining about not getting enough attention. But I also couldn't pretend this was okay, that it was normal for a son to completely ignore his mother on Christmas. I decided to wait 1 more day. Maybe there was still an explanation I hadn't thought of. December 27th passed with continued silence. By December 28th, I'd moved from hurt to confused. What had I done wrong? Had I offended Emily somehow? Had I said something at our last brief coffee meeting that upset Liam? I replayed every interaction from the past 6 months, looking for clues, searching for the moment when I'd become someone my son couldn't bother to text on Christmas. I couldn't find it, which somehow made it worse. On December 29th, 3 days after Christmas, I was scrolling through Facebook, just mindlessly looking through my feed, photos of friends' grandchildren, updates from former teaching colleagues, the usual digital noise that fills our lives. That's when I saw it. A post from Emily, posted on Christmas Day at 6:47 p.m. A photo, professional quality, clearly carefully staged. Emily standing in what looked like an elegant living room I didn't recognize. She was dressed beautifully, red dress, perfect makeup, holding something. The caption read, "Feeling so blessed and grateful for this incredibly generous Christmas gift from Liam. Best husband ever. Blessed Chuck Christmas love, Juck Hermes Birkin." I stared at that caption, read it 3 times before I fully processed what it said. Hermes Birkin. I didn't know much about designer handbags, but I knew that name. Everyone knows that name. It's one of the most exclusive, expensive handbags in the world. I clicked on the photo to enlarge it, looked closely at what Emily was holding. A beautiful orange leather bag with gold hardware. Pristine. Expensive. Unmistakably luxury. My hands were shaking as I searched on my phone. How much does a Hermes Birkin bag cost? The answer made me feel physically sick, starting at $8,000. Some cost over $20,000. The orange leather one like Emily was holding typically ran between $10,000 and $12,000. My son had spent at least $8,000 on a Christmas present for his wife, while he couldn't even send me a text message. But that wasn't even the worst part of the post. I scrolled down to look at the comments. Dozens of them. Friends and family congratulating Emily, expressing jealousy over the bag, commenting on how amazing Liam was. And then I saw one comment that stopped my breath. From someone named Patricia Thornton, Emily's mother. I recognized the name from the wedding. Patricia had commented, "So happy you girls both got spoiled this Christmas. That bag looks even more beautiful in person." Both got spoiled. Both. I read that comment 5 times, trying to understand what it meant. Both bags looked beautiful. Both. Plural. My son had bought his mother-in-law a Hermes Birkin bag too. I felt the room spin. Sat down hard on my couch. Tried to breathe through the crushing weight on my chest. Liam had spent Christmas with Emily's family. He'd given his wife an $8,000 handbag. He'd given his mother-in-law an $8,000 handbag. And he'd given his own mother, the woman who'd raised him alone after his father died, who'd supported him through college, who'd loved him unconditionally his entire life, nothing. Not a gift, not a card, not even a text message. $16,000 minimum on designer bags for his wife's family. $0 and zero effort for his own mother. The comparison was so stark, so deliberately cruel, that I couldn't process it. This wasn't oversight. This wasn't being too busy. This was a clear statement of priorities. His wife's family mattered. His own mother didn't. I sat on my couch for probably an hour, staring at that Facebook post, reading and rereading the comments, trying to make sense of how my relationship with my son had deteriorated to the point where I wasn't even worth a Christmas text while his mother-in-law was worth $8,000. And the worst part, the part that made this hurt even deeper, was realizing that this had been done publicly. Emily had posted this on social media, for everyone to see, including me. Whether she knew I'd see it or not, the fact remained. The whole world could now see exactly where I ranked in my son's priorities. Nowhere. I wanted to call Liam immediately, demand an explanation, ask what I'd done to deserve this treatment, confront him with the evidence of his cruelty. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe. Or the fear that if I called, he'd make excuses that would somehow make me feel even worse. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, moving through my house like a ghost, making tea I didn't drink, starting tasks I didn't finish. My mind kept returning to that Facebook post, to those handbags, to the undeniable proof that I'd become irrelevant in my only child's life. That night, I finally sent him a text. Simple, non-accusatory. "Hi, honey. I hope you had a nice Christmas. I didn't hear from you and wanted to make sure everything was okay." I waited, watched my phone, hoping for an immediate response that would explain everything. It came 3 hours later. "Hey, Mom. Yeah, we're fine. Sorry, been super busy with Emily's family stuff. Hope you had a good holiday." That was it. 11 words. No apology. No explanation for the silence. No acknowledgement that completely ignoring your mother on Christmas might be hurtful. Just, been super busy with Emily's family stuff. Busy spending $16,000 on handbags while his own mother sat alone. I stared at that text for a long time before responding. I saw Emily's post about the bag. "That was very generous of you." I wanted to see if he'd acknowledge it. Explain it. Maybe even apologize for the disparity. His response came quickly this time. "Yeah, she's been wanting one forever. Figured Christmas was a good time." Nothing about his mother-in-law's identical bag. Nothing about why spending that kind of money on Emily's family was possible while a simple text to his own mother wasn't. I typed and deleted several responses. Finally settled on, "It would have been nice to hear from you on Christmas." 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Finally, "Sorry, we'll do better next year. We'll do better next year." Not, "I'm sorry I hurt you." Not, "I should have called." Not, "You matter to me and I was wrong." Just a vague promise that sounded more like brushing off a complaint than genuine remorse. I didn't respond. What could I say? Any response would either make me sound needy or bitter, or like I was begging for crumbs of attention from my own child. I set my phone down and sat in the silence of my small house and felt the full weight of what I'd lost. If you're watching this on Lindsay Stories, I need you to understand something about this kind of betrayal. It's not like a fight or an argument where there's a specific moment you can point to and say, that's when things went wrong. This was erasure by neglect, death by 1,000 small exclusions, a gradual revelation that I'd been demoted from mother to obligation to afterthought to irrelevant. And the handbags, those expensive status symbol handbags, weren't just gifts. They were statements. Clear, unmistakable statements about who mattered and who didn't. Emily mattered enough for $8,000. Emily's mother mattered enough for $8,000. I didn't matter enough for a text message. The days after that exchange were some of the hardest of my life, harder even than the days after Daniel died, because at least then I'd had Liam. We'd grieved together, supported each other, been there for each other. Now I had no one. I started reviewing the past 2 years in a new light, looking for patterns I'd missed or ignored. The gradual reduction in contact, the cancellations, the excuses, the way I was never invited to their home, the way Emily always seemed slightly impatient when we did meet, like she was tolerating an obligation rather than enjoying time with family. I remembered Liam's wedding, how Emily's mother, Patricia, had been so involved in everything, how she'd walked around like the queen of the event, making decisions, organizing details, being consulted on every choice. And I remembered feeling like an outsider at my own son's wedding, smiling for photos but not really included, thanked for coming but not truly welcomed into the new family being formed. I'd told myself I was being sensitive, that it was Emily's special day and of course her mother would be more involved. But now I saw it differently. That wedding had been the beginning of my replacement. Patricia becoming the primary mother figure in Liam's life, Emily's family becoming his real family, me becoming the biological mother who existed on the periphery, acknowledged when convenient, but not truly valued. The Thanksgiving I'd spent alone while Liam celebrated with Emily's family, the birthdays where he'd send a quick text but no call, the times I'd suggested getting together and he'd been too busy, but then I'd see social media posts of him at events with Emily's family. It all made sense now. I hadn't been gradually excluded by accident. I'd been deliberately replaced. Patricia had become his mother. Emily's siblings had become his siblings. Her extended family had become his family. And I had become nothing. A remnant of his past that he maintained minimal contact with out of obligation, but no longer valued or prioritized. The pain of that realization was crushing. I'd spent weeks after Daniel's funeral holding Liam while he cried. I'd supported him through his grief. I'd been there for every important moment of his life, every birthday, every graduation, every accomplishment. And he'd repaid that lifetime of love and support by erasing me from his present and future. 2 weeks after Christmas, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove past Liam and Emily's house. I knew where they lived, a large, beautiful home in a nice neighborhood. I'd never been inside, had never been invited, but I wanted to see it. To understand the life my son had built that apparently had no room for me in it. The house was impressive. 3 stories, manicured lawn even in winter, expensive cars in the driveway. This was the kind of house you buy when you're doing well financially, when you have money to spend on things like $16,000 handbags. I sat in my car across the street, looking at that house, and felt the full weight of my insignificance. My son lived 10 miles away from me. 10 miles, a 15-minute drive, yet I might as well have been on another planet for how often I saw him or heard from him. And I realized something painful, but necessary. I had to stop waiting for him to prioritize me, because he wasn't going to. He'd made his choice. Patricia and Emily's family were his family now. I was just the woman who'd given birth to him and raised him and loved him unconditionally. And apparently, that wasn't enough to earn even basic consideration on Christmas. I drove home that day and made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for my son's attention anymore. I wasn't going to make excuses for his neglect. I wasn't going to pretend that being ignored on Christmas was somehow acceptable behavior that I should tolerate. I was going to protect myself, even if that meant accepting that my relationship with my son was effectively over. That night, I boxed up the presents I'd bought for Liam and Emily. I didn't return them. I donated them. Let someone else benefit from thoughtfulness that wasn't appreciated. I removed Liam from my emergency contact list, changed my will to leave my modest estate to charity instead of to him. Not out of spite, but out of honesty. Why leave my life savings to someone who couldn't even send a Christmas text? And I stopped checking my phone constantly, hoping to hear from him. Stopped crafting casual texts to maintain contact. Stopped trying to insert myself into a life that clearly had no space for me. It hurt. God, it hurt. Letting go of my only child, accepting that he'd chosen a new family over his own mother. It was like mourning a death except the person was still alive. But it also brought a strange kind of peace. The peace that comes from stopping a futile struggle, from accepting reality instead of fighting it. 3 weeks after Christmas, Liam called. First time he'd actually called rather than texted in months. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom, hi, how are you?" His voice sounded normal, casual, like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just demonstrated in the cruelest possible way that I didn't matter to him. "I'm fine, Liam. What do you need?" There was a pause. He'd noticed the coolness in my voice. "I don't need anything, just calling to check in. We haven't talked in a while." "We haven't talked at all. I sent you a text after Christmas. You sent back 11 words. Another pause. "Mom," I explained, "we were really busy with Emily's family." "Yes, busy buying $8,000 handbags for your mother-in-law while your own mother received nothing, not even a phone call." Silence. "Mom, it's not like that." "What is it like, Liam? Explain it to me. Because from where I'm sitting, you spent $16,000 on designer bags for your wife and her mother while completely ignoring your own mother on Christmas. So please, tell me what I'm misunderstanding. You're making this about money. It's not about money. You're right. It's not about money. It's about priority. It's about effort. It's about the fact that you had time and energy and resources to celebrate with Emily's family, but nothing, not even a text message, for your own mother. That's what it's about. Mom, you're being unfair. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Emily's family expects certain things. And your own mother apparently expects too much by wanting a Merry Christmas text. Got it. That's not what I meant. You're twisting this. I'm not twisting anything. I'm stating facts. You ignored me on Christmas. You spent thousands on Emily's family. Those are facts. Why are you being so difficult about this? I said I was sorry. I said we'd do better. No, you said we'll do better next year. That's not the same as being sorry. And it doesn't change what you already did. There was a long silence. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. What do you want from me, Mom? Do you want me to apologize for having a wife and in-laws? Do you want me to feel guilty for building my own life? I want you to acknowledge that completely ignoring your mother on Christmas was hurtful and wrong. I want you to take responsibility for choosing to exclude me from your life. That's what I want. You're being dramatic. I didn't exclude you. I was just busy. Busy enough to post photos online showing exactly how you spent your time and money. So everyone, including me, could see exactly where I ranked in your priorities. Oh, so this is about Facebook. You're mad because you saw a picture of a handbag and got jealous. The contempt in his voice was like a knife. I'm not jealous, Liam. I'm hurt. There's a difference. And the fact that you can't see that you think this is about jealousy over a purse rather than pain over being abandoned by my only child, that tells me everything I need to know about where we are. Where we are. What does that mean? It means I'm done, Liam. I'm done making excuses for you. Done waiting for phone calls that don't come. Done pretending it's okay to be an afterthought in your life. You've made it very clear that Emily's family is your real family now. So I'm releasing you from the obligation of maintaining a relationship with me. Mom, don't be ridiculous. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being realistic. You don't want a relationship with me. You want someone you can ignore 11 months of the year and then send a perfunctory text to on Mother's Day to clear your conscience. I'm not interested in being that person anymore. So what? You're just cutting me off? That's your solution? I'm not cutting you off. I'm accepting the reality you've already created. You cut me off 2 years ago when you got married. You just didn't tell me. I was too busy making excuses to notice. He was angry now. I could hear it in his voice. This is what you always do. You make everything about you. You guilt trip me for having my own life. Emily was right about you. There it was. The truth that had probably been there all along. What did Emily say about me? Nothing. Forget it. No, tell me. I want to know what my daughter-in-law thinks of me. The one I barely know because you've never once invited me to your home or included me in your life since you got married. She said you might not take it well when I started prioritizing my marriage. That you might be possessive. Possessive. That's what I'd been reduced to. A possessive mother who couldn't let go. I see. So, wanting to be acknowledged on Christmas is possessive. Interesting definition. Mom, you're doing it again. Making yourself the victim. Liam. I spent Christmas Day alone, hoping for a text from my only child that never came. Then I discovered via social media that you'd spent thousands of dollars on handbags for your in-laws while giving me nothing. I'm not making myself the victim. I am the victim. I have to go. This conversation isn't productive. No, I suppose it's not. Goodbye, Liam. I hung up before he could respond. Sat there shaking, crying, feeling like I'd just severed the last remaining thread connecting me to my son, but also feeling, underneath the pain, a strange kind of relief. The relief of finally being honest, of finally saying out loud what I'd been feeling for 2 years. I didn't hear from him after that call. Days passed, then weeks, then months. My birthday came and went in February. No card, no text, nothing. Mother's Day arrived. I'd wondered if he'd send the perfunctory text he'd accused me of expecting. He didn't. And I realized that by refusing to accept scraps of attention, by demanding basic respect and consideration, I'd apparently crossed a line that made me unworthy of even minimal contact. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it also validated everything I'd felt. If Liam could cut me off completely just because I'd objected to being ignored on Christmas, then our relationship had been even more fragile than I'd realized. If you're still watching this on Lindsay Stories, I want you to understand something. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you can sacrifice everything for your children and they can still choose to walk away. Not because you're a bad parent. Not because you did something wrong, but because they've built a new life with new priorities, and you no longer fit into the narrative they're creating for themselves. I don't know if Liam ever thinks about me. I don't know if he feels guilty for how things ended, or if he's convinced himself that I'm the unreasonable one. I suspect Emily's family, the family he chose, tells him I'm difficult, possessive, that he's better off without me. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am difficult for expecting more than complete neglect. I'm 66 now. It's been a year since that Christmas, since the handbag, since the conversation that ended my relationship with my son. My life looks different now. I've reconnected with old teaching friends. I volunteer at the library reading to children. I take art classes. I travel occasionally, small trips, nothing extravagant, but enough to remind myself that there's joy available even when your child has abandoned you. I still think about Liam every day. I can't help it. He's my son. That doesn't just stop mattering because he stopped caring, but I don't wait for his call anymore. Don't check social media to see glimpses of a life I'm not part of. Don't torture myself wondering if this will be the year he remembers his mother. I've learned to live with the loss, to accept that some people, even people you raised and loved, can leave your life so completely it's like you never existed. The hardest part isn't the loneliness, though that's difficult. The hardest part is reconciling the little boy I raised with the man who could ignore his mother on Christmas while spending $16,000 on handbags for his in-laws. Where did that little boy go? The one who made me Mother's Day cards and told me I was his favorite person? The one who cried at his father's funeral and held my hand and promised we'd get through it together? He's gone, replaced by someone I don't recognize. Someone who values status and money and fitting into his new family more than he values the woman who gave him life. And I have to be okay with that. Not because it's fair or right, but because I have no other choice. My name is Lauren. I'm 66 years old. I spent Christmas alone waiting for a message from my son that never came. I discovered via social media that he'd spent $8,000 on a designer handbag for his mother-in-law while giving me nothing. I confronted him. He chose to cut me off completely rather than take responsibility for his cruelty. And I'm still here, still living, still finding moments of joy, still moving forward, Because that's what we do when the people we love the most hurt us the most. We survive, we adapt, we learn to live with loss, and we stop waiting for love that isn't coming. That's my story. That's my Christmas that wasn't. That's my lesson in learning that being someone's mother doesn't guarantee being valued in their life. Share this if you've ever felt invisible to your own children, if you've ever been replaced by in-laws, if you've ever discovered via social media that you don't matter as much as you thought you did. You're not alone. I'm living proof that you can survive this. It hurts. It changes you, but you survive. Thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing my pain. Subscribe to Lindsay Stories. Share with people who need to know they're not the only ones dealing with family abandonment. Because silence shouldn't protect the people who hurt us. And we're done being silent. That's everything. What I haven't fully shared yet is what the months after that final phone call were really like. Because cutting off your only child, even when they've already cut you off emotionally, isn't a clean break. It's a slow, agonizing process of learning to live with permanent absence. The first month was the hardest. I'd wake up every morning and instinctively check my phone, hoping for a message that would make everything make sense. An apology, an explanation, something. Nothing ever came. I'd go to the grocery store and see mothers shopping with their adult sons. I'd watch them laugh together, see the easy familiarity between them, and feel a physical ache in my chest. That used to be us. When did it stop being us? I started avoiding certain places. The coffee shop where Liam and I used to meet occasionally. The park where we'd walked when he was going through his divorce from Sarah. His first marriage that ended before Emily. Places that held memories I could no longer bear to revisit. My former teaching colleagues would ask about him. "How's Liam doing?" They'd ask casually, expecting the proud mother updates I used to give freely. "He's fine," I'd say. "Busy with work." After a while, they stopped asking. Maybe they sensed something was wrong. Maybe they just lost interest. Either way, I was grateful to not have to keep pretending. I joined a support group for estranged parents. Found it through a Google search one particularly lonely evening. Parents whose children have cut them off. The search terms that led me to a church basement in St. Paul, where 12 other people sat in a circle every Tuesday night, sharing stories that all sounded heartbreakingly similar to mine. Sarah, whose daughter hadn't spoken to her in 5 years after marrying a man who didn't approve of her family. Michael, whose son had moved across the country and changed his phone number. Patricia, whose 3 children had gradually stopped including her in their lives after she got remarried following their father's death. Each story different in details but identical in the core pain, being rejected by the children you'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. They have to want to reconcile, the group leader said during one meeting. You can't force it. You can't manipulate it. All you can do is work on accepting it and finding peace with the situation as it is, not as you wish it would be. I hated that advice. I wanted action steps, things I could do to fix it, ways to make Liam see how wrong he was, how much he'd hurt me, how our relationship was worth fighting for. But the truth was, there were no action steps. The ball was entirely in Liam's court, and he'd chosen not to play. The group taught me vocabulary for what I was experiencing. Ambiguous loss. Grieving someone who's still alive. Parental alienation, when one person influences your child against you. Chosen estrangement, when adult children voluntarily cut off contact. Having words for it didn't make it hurt less, but it helped to know I wasn't alone, that this happened to other people, other good parents who'd done their best and still lost their children. 3 months after our final phone call, I did something I'd been putting off. I went through all the photos in my house, albums from Liam's childhood, framed pictures of him at various ages, photos from his wedding to Emily. I took them all down, boxed them up, put them in the basement. Not out of anger, not even out of hurt, really, but out of self-preservation. I couldn't walk past those photos every day and feel the constant reminder of what I'd lost. Some people might say that was giving up, letting him go too easily. But I'd learned in the support group that there's a difference between giving up and protecting yourself. Keeping photos displayed of someone who wanted nothing to do with me wasn't loyalty. It was self-torture. I kept one photo out, a small one on my nightstand. Liam at age 7, missing his 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera with complete innocent joy. That was the son I missed. Not the man who'd ignored me on Christmas. Not the person who'd chosen designer handbags over his own mother. But that little boy who'd loved me completely and unconditionally. That little boy was gone. Had been gone for a long time, really. I'd just been too attached to the memory of him to notice. 6 months after the phone call, I ran into someone I knew from the old neighborhood, Karen, whose son had gone to school with Liam. "Lauren, how wonderful to see you." She hugged me warmly. "How's that son of yours? I saw he got married a while back." "He did. He's doing well. And you must be enjoying being so close to him. Are you helping with grandchildren yet?" The question hit like a physical blow. I hadn't even thought about that. Liam and Emily were 35 and 33, prime age for having children. Would I even know if they had a baby? Would Liam tell me? Would I find out via Facebook, scrolling past photos of grandchildren I'd never meet? No grandchildren yet, I managed. But who knows what the future holds? Karen chatted for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. I made it to my car before breaking down completely. I hadn't just lost my son. I'd potentially lost any future grandchildren, any chance at that relationship, that role, that phase of life I'd imagined for myself. Patricia, Emily's mother, would be grandma. She'd be at the hospital when babies were born. She'd babysit and spoil and be part of their lives. I'd be nothing. A genetic contributor who wasn't worth knowing. That realization sent me spiraling for days. I called in sick to my library volunteer shift, canceled my art class, spent 3 days in pajamas, barely eating, just sitting with the magnitude of what I'd lost. The support group kept me sane during that time, reminded me that catastrophizing about hypothetical grandchildren wasn't helpful, that I had to stay in the present, deal with what was actually happening rather than tormenting myself with possibilities. But the fear had been planted, and I couldn't completely shake it. 8 months after the phone call, something unexpected happened. I got a text from Emily. "Hi, Lauren. I wanted to reach out because I feel bad about how things ended between you and Liam. I think there's been a lot of miscommunication and hurt feelings on both sides. Would you be willing to meet for coffee to talk?" I stared at that text for probably 20 minutes. Read it over and over, looking for hidden meanings, traps, ulterior motives. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to believe this was the opening that would lead to reconciliation, that Emily was extending an olive branch that might rebuild the bridge to my son. But another part of me, the part that had been growing stronger over these months, was suspicious. Why now? Why was Emily reaching out instead of Liam? What did miscommunication mean when the facts were so clear? He'd ignored me on Christmas while spending thousands on her family. I waited a day before responding. "What does Liam think about you contacting me?" Her response came within minutes. "He doesn't know. I think he's too proud to reach out himself. But I know he misses you. He just doesn't know how to fix things." That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about Emily managing the optics of having a husband estranged from his mother, or maybe easing her own guilt about her role in our distance. But it wasn't about Liam actually wanting me back in his life. If he wanted that, he'd reach out himself. He was a 37-year-old man, fully capable of sending a text or picking up a phone. I responded, "I appreciate you reaching out, but I think any conversation about my relationship with Liam needs to happen between me and Liam directly. If he wants to talk to me, he knows how to reach me." Emily didn't respond to that, and Liam never reached out, which confirmed what I'd suspected. This had been Emily trying to fix something that Liam didn't actually want fixed. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe Patricia had said something about the situation that made Emily uncomfortable. Maybe she was pregnant and worried about the awkwardness of having a grandmother her child would never know. Whatever her motivation, it wasn't enough to actually change anything. A year after the Christmas silence, I had a health scare. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to be frightening. I found a lump in my breast during a self-exam, called my doctor, got a mammogram and biopsy scheduled. The wait for results was excruciating. 2 weeks of not knowing whether I had cancer, imagining worst-case scenarios, facing the possibility of going through treatment alone. I thought about calling Liam, telling him what was happening. Maybe a health crisis would break through whatever walls existed between us. But I didn't. Because I realized that if I did, if I used my health to guilt him into contact, Any relationship that resulted wouldn't be real. It would be obligation-based, pity-based. I didn't want that. If Liam was going to be in my life, I wanted it to be because he valued me, not because he felt sorry for me. The biopsy came back benign. I cried with relief in the doctor's office, then cried again in my car, realizing I had no one to share the good news with, no family, no close friend who'd been waiting alongside me for results. I was truly alone, but I was also still here, still alive, still moving forward. The support group helped me process that experience, helped me see that I'd made the right choice not to weaponize my health. That building a life that didn't revolve around waiting for Liam to come back was the healthiest thing I could do. I started saying yes to things I'd previously declined. A church friend invited me to join a book club. I said yes. A former teaching colleague asked if I wanted to take a road trip to see the fall colors. I said yes. I adopted a cat from the local shelter. An older orange tabby named Rusty who'd been returned twice by families who found him too standoffish. We were perfect for each other. Two beings who'd been rejected and were learning to trust again. Rusty didn't care that I was estranged from my son, didn't judge me for whatever flaws had made me unworthy of Liam's love. He just curled up on my lap every evening and purred, asking for nothing more than food and gentle pets. It was enough. Some days, it was more than enough. 18 months after the final phone call, I saw something on Facebook that I wish I hadn't. Not on Liam's page. I'd unfollowed him months ago to protect myself, but someone from our old neighborhood had tagged Emily in a photo. A baby shower. Pink decorations. Emily visibly pregnant, glowing, surrounded by friends and family, including Patricia, of course. Emily's mother positioned right next to her daughter, hand on her belly, looking every inch the devoted grandmother to be. I was going to be a grandmother. Or, more accurately, I already was a grandmother in a biological sense, even if I'd never get to fulfill the role. The pain of that realization was different from anything I'd experienced before. This wasn't about my relationship with Liam anymore. This was about an innocent child, my grandchild, who would grow up never knowing me. Not because of anything they did, not because of any choice they made, but because their father had decided his mother wasn't worth including in his life. I closed Facebook, deleted the app from my phone entirely. I couldn't keep accidentally seeing glimpses of a life I wasn't part of. It was too painful. 2 months later, I found out through Karen, the old neighbor who seemed to have a pipeline to all local gossip, that Emily had given birth to a girl, Olivia Rose, my granddaughter, 7 pounds, 6 ounces, healthy, beautiful, according to Karen, who'd seen photos. I would never hold her, never babysit her, never read her stories or watch her grow up or be any part of her life, because I'd committed the unforgivable sin of objecting to being ignored on Christmas. The support group warned me that this would be hard, that becoming grandparents to children we'd never meet was one of the most painful aspects of estrangement. They were right. This was different from losing Liam. This was losing someone I'd never even had the chance to love. I bought a gift anyway. A small stuffed elephant from a local toy store. Soft, high quality, the kind of toy that becomes a childhood companion. I wrapped it carefully, wrote a card. To Olivia Rose, welcome to the world. You are already so loved. Love, Grandma Lauren. I mailed it to Liam and Emily's address. Didn't expect a thank you. Didn't expect acknowledgement. Just needed to mark this moment somehow. To say that I existed, that I cared, even if I'd never be allowed to be part of her life. The package came back 3 weeks later. Returned to sender stamped across the front. They'd refused it. Sent it back without opening it. That hurt worse than the silence. It was such an active rejection, such a deliberate statement that even gifts for their daughter from her biological grandmother were unwelcome. I donated the elephant to a children's charity. Let some other child love it. Tried not to think about my granddaughter growing up without ever knowing I existed. If you're still watching this on Lindsay Stories, I need you to understand something. Estrangement doesn't get easier with time. You don't just get over it or move on. You learn to live with a permanent hole in your life, a relationship-sized absence that never quite heals. Some days are better than others. Some days I can go hours without thinking about Liam or Olivia. I can focus on my book club or my volunteer work or my cat and feel something close to contentment. Other days, the loss hits me like a tidal wave. I'll see a father and son at the grocery store, or hear a baby cry, or drive past the hospital where Liam was born, and I'll have to pull over and cry and remind myself that I'm still here, still surviving, even though part of me has been permanently severed. The support group taught me that there are different types of grief. The grief of death has an endpoint, a funeral, a cultural recognition of loss. The grief of estrangement is ambiguous, ongoing. Your child is out there living their life, being a father, celebrating holidays, just without you. They're not gone. They've just chosen for you to be gone from their life, and society doesn't know what to do with that. There's no sympathy card for, your son decided you don't matter anymore. No support system for, you'll never meet your granddaughter because of $8,000 handbags. You're just expected to deal with it quietly, to not be bitter, to somehow maintain dignity while experiencing one of the most profound rejections a person can face. I'm 67 now, 2 years since that Christmas. 2 years since I discovered via Facebook that I ranked below designer handbags in my son's priorities. Liam is 39. He and Emily have a second child now, a boy, according to Karen, Oliver, my grandson who I'll also never meet. I have 2 grandchildren I've never held, never will hold, most likely. Sometimes I imagine what they look like, whether they have Liam's eyes or his smile, whether they're shy like he was as a child or outgoing, whether they ask about their other grandmother, or if they've been told I don't exist, but I try not to dwell on those thoughts. They lead nowhere productive. Instead, I focus on the life I've built. It's smaller than I'd imagined, quieter, but it's mine. I have my book club, my volunteer work, my art classes. Rusty, who's currently asleep on the back of my couch, his favorite spot. I have friends from the support group who understand this specific pain. We celebrate each other's birthdays. We text when we're having bad days. We remind each other that being rejected by your children doesn't mean you're worthless. I've learned to find joy in small things. A good book, a beautiful sunset, the first snowfall of winter, Rusty's purr, a particularly insightful discussion at book club. These aren't the joys I'd imagined for this stage of my life. I'd pictured grandchildren and family gatherings and being needed, important, valued. Instead, I have solitude and independence and the hard-won peace that comes from accepting things I cannot change. Is it enough? Some days, yes. Some days, no. But it's what I have. And I've learned to stop apologizing for feeling hurt, while simultaneously working to build a life that isn't defined by that hurt. My name is Lauren. I'm 67 years old. My son ignored me on Christmas and spent $16,000 on handbags for his in-laws instead. When I objected, he cut me off completely. I have 2 grandchildren I've never met and will likely never meet. I've spent 2 years learning to live with permanent absence, learning that love isn't always reciprocated, learning that being someone's mother doesn't guarantee being valued in their life. And I'm still here, still finding reasons to get up in the morning, still believing that life has meaning even when it looks nothing like what you'd planned. That's not a triumphant ending. It's just an honest one. Some stories don't end with reconciliation or justice or closure. Some just end with survival, with learning to carry grief while still choosing to live. This is mine. If you're dealing with estrangement from your children, know that you're not alone. Know that the pain is real and valid. Know that you can survive this even when survival seems impossible. Join a support group. Build a life that doesn't revolve around waiting for someone who isn't coming back. Find meaning in places you didn't expect. And know that being rejected by your children doesn't define your worth. It defines their capacity for relationship, their ability to value what they had, not your value as a person or as a parent. I'm still learning that lesson. 2 years in, I'm still learning it. But I'm learning, and I'm surviving. And some days, that's enough. Share this story with anyone dealing with estrangement, with anyone who's been replaced by in-laws, with anyone who's discovered they don't matter as much as they thought they did. Let them know they're not alone in this pain. Subscribe to Lindsay Stories. Comment with your experiences. Share with people who need to hear it, because silence protects the people who hurt us. And we're done being silent. Thank you for witnessing my story. Thank you for letting me say out loud what I've carried in silence for too long. That's everything. There's one more part of this story I need to share. Something that happened 6 months ago that changed how I understood everything. I was at Target, doing routine shopping, walking down the baby aisle because it was the quickest route to the household goods section I needed, not thinking about anything in particular. And then I heard a voice that stopped me in my tracks. "Mom, I told you already. We need the organic brand. This one has chemicals." Liam's voice. Unmistakable. I froze. Stood there holding my shopping basket, heart pounding, trying to decide what to do. I could turn around, leave before he saw me, avoid the confrontation, the awkwardness, the pain, or I could face it. Face him, for the first time in 2 years. Before I could decide, I heard another voice. Small, young, a child. "Daddy, can I have this?" I looked up, saw them at the end of the aisle. Liam holding a shopping basket. A woman I assumed was Emily standing next to him, and a little girl, maybe 2 years old, holding up a stuffed animal. Olivia, my granddaughter. She was beautiful. Dark, curly hair like Liam had as a child. Big brown eyes, wearing a pink dress with a cardigan. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Just stood there staring at this child I'd never met, this piece of my son's life that existed entirely without me. Liam saw me before I could turn away. Our eyes met across maybe 20 feet of store aisle. His expression changed instantly. Shock. Then something harder to read. Discomfort? Guilt? Anger? He said something to Emily. She looked up, saw me, said something back. They had a quick, tense conversation I couldn't hear. Olivia was still holding the stuffed animal, oblivious to the adult tension. I should have walked away. Should have let them pretend they hadn't seen me and moved on with my shopping. But I couldn't. 2 years of silence, of absence, of being shut out. It all crystallized in this moment, and I found myself walking toward them. "Liam," I said when I got close enough. My voice sounded strange, too formal, like I was greeting a stranger. "Mom." He nodded, didn't smile, didn't move to hug me. Just acknowledged my presence like you'd acknowledge an acquaintance you'd rather avoid. "Hi, Lauren," Emily said. Also too formal, too polite. The voice you use for uncomfortable social situations. I looked down at Olivia. She was staring up at me with curious eyes. "And who's this beautiful girl?" I asked, even though I knew exactly who she was. "This is our daughter," Liam said. Not, "This is Olivia," or "This is your granddaughter." Just our daughter, as if her relationship to me was irrelevant. "She's lovely. How old is she?" 2. Just turned 2 last month. 2 years old. 2 years I'd missed. 2 birthdays. 2 Christmases. 2 years of development and growth and milestones. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, crouching down to Olivia's level. "What's your name?" She looked at her father for permission. He gave a tiny nod. "Olivia," she said quietly. Then, with more confidence, "I'm 2. 2 is a wonderful age. Are you picking out a toy?" She held up the stuffed animal, a bunny. Daddy said maybe. Maybe usually means yes when you're 2. I remember that from when Liam was little. The way we'd negotiate in stores, the careful dance of teaching delayed gratification, while also wanting to see our children happy. I stood back up, looked at Liam, really looked at him for the first time in 2 years. He looked older. Still my son, still recognizably the boy I'd raised, but different, harder around the edges. A father now, a man with responsibilities and priorities that apparently didn't include his mother. "You look well," I said, "because what else do you say? I'm so hurt you abandoned me. Why did $8,000 handbags matter more than I did? How could you have a daughter and never tell me?" "You too," he said, stilted, awkward. Emily had moved closer to him, a unified front. Her hand was on his arm, either supportive or possessive, maybe both. "We should go," Emily said quietly. "We have other errands." "Of course," I said. "I won't keep you." I turned to leave, started walking away, and then I heard Olivia's small voice. "Daddy, who was that lady?" I stopped, couldn't help myself, turned back slightly to hear his answer. There was a pause. Long enough that I knew he was choosing his words carefully. "Just someone I used to know." he said. Just someone I used to know. Not your grandmother. Not my mother. Not even an old family friend. Just someone I used to know. I walked away then. Made it 3 aisles over before I had to stop, lean against a shelf, and try to breathe through the pain of those words. Just someone I used to know. I'd given birth to him, raised him alone after his father died, supported him through every struggle and celebration, loved him with everything I had, and I'd been reduced to just someone I used to know. I left my shopping basket in the aisle and walked out of Target, sat in my car and cried for probably 20 minutes. Not because I was surprised. I'd known for 2 years that I didn't matter to him anymore. But there's something about hearing it said out loud, about having your irrelevance confirmed in such stark terms, that makes it hurt fresh all over again. When I got home, I called Lisa from the support group. She was the one I was closest to, a woman whose 2 sons had cut her off after she divorced their father. I saw him, I said as soon as she answered. I saw Liam and his family, and he told his daughter I was just someone he used to know. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. How do you do this?" I asked. "How do you keep living with this? It's been 2 years, and it still hurts like it happened yesterday." "Some hurts don't heal," Lisa said gently. "They just become part of who we are. You learn to carry them, but they don't disappear. I don't want to carry this forever. I want it to stop hurting. I know. But wanting that doesn't make it happen. You just have to keep doing what you're doing, building a life that has meaning, even with this hurt in it." I knew she was right. But right then, sitting in my car with tears streaming down my face, I didn't want wisdom. I wanted my son back. I wanted to be someone more than someone I used to know to my own child. That encounter at Target haunted me for weeks. I kept replaying it in my mind, analyzing every word, every expression, looking for something I might have missed. Some sign that Liam felt bad about how things had ended. Some indication that he might want to repair our relationship. I found nothing. If anything, he'd seemed uncomfortable. Like running into me was an inconvenience, not an opportunity. I thought about reaching out, sending a text acknowledging that I'd seen them, saying how beautiful Olivia was, maybe opening a door for future contact. But I remembered what the support group had taught me, that reaching out from a position of need or desperation rarely led anywhere good, that if Liam wanted a relationship, the ball was in his court. I'd made clear I was open to contact. He knew how to reach me. He just didn't want to. The Target encounter did change one thing, though. It made the estrangement real in a different way. Before, it had been abstract, a relationship that existed in memory and absence. But seeing him, seeing Olivia, hearing those words, it made concrete what I'd been living with for 2 years. I really had lost my son. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't something that time would heal. This was permanent separation, and I needed to fully accept that if I was going to survive. I made an appointment with a therapist. Not just the support group, but actual professional help. Someone trained in grief and family estrangement. Dr. Rebecca Chen, a woman in her 50s who specialized in complicated family dynamics. I started seeing her twice a week. "Tell me about the relationship you wish you had with your son," she said during our second session. "I wish he valued me. I wish I mattered to him. I wish I could be part of my grandchildren's lives." "And the relationship you actually have?" "None. We don't have a relationship. I'm just someone he used to know." "That must be incredibly painful." "It is. But what I don't understand is how to live with it. How do I accept that my only child wants nothing to do with me? How do I make peace with being erased from my grandchildren's lives? How do I stop hoping things will change?" Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Those are all the right questions, and they don't have easy answers. But I can tell you this. Acceptance doesn't mean you stop hurting. It means you stop fighting the reality of your situation. You acknowledge that this is what is, not what should be or what you wish it was. But how do I do that? One day at a time. One moment at a time. When you find yourself wishing things were different, you acknowledge the wish and then return to the present, to what actually exists. It sounded impossible, but I started trying. When I'd catch myself imagining Christmas with grandchildren, I'd stop, acknowledge the fantasy, return to the present. Me, my cat, my actual life. When I'd see mothers with their adult sons and feel that stab of envy, I'd acknowledge it, let myself feel it, then let it pass. When I'd wonder what Olivia and Oliver were doing, what milestones they were hitting, what Liam was teaching them, I'd acknowledge those thoughts and then redirect to something I could actually control. My book club reading, my volunteer shift, my art project. It didn't stop the hurt, but it made the hurt more manageable. More something I was living alongside rather than something that was consuming me. 6 months after the Target encounter, I did something I'd been considering for a while. I wrote Liam a letter, not expecting a response, not trying to guilt him or manipulate him or force reconciliation, just saying the things I needed to say, getting them out of my head and onto paper where they could stop echoing in my mind. I wrote about the hurt, about the confusion, about what I wished I'd done differently and what I knew I'd done right. I wrote about accepting that our relationship was over, about understanding that I couldn't force him to want me in his life, about hoping that someday he might choose differently, but accepting that he might not. And I wrote about forgiveness, not because he'd asked for it or earned it, but because carrying anger and resentment was poisoning me from the inside. I needed to let it go for my own sake, regardless of what he did or didn't do. I sealed the letter, addressed it, put a stamp on it, and then I didn't mail it. Instead, I put it in a box with all the other letters I'd written over the past 2 years. Letters I'd never sent because sending them wouldn't change anything. They were therapy for me, a way to process my thoughts and feelings, but they didn't need to be burdens placed on someone who'd made clear they didn't want contact. The box lived in my desk drawer, a record of my grief, my processing, my slow journey toward acceptance. Maybe someday I'd mail them. Maybe after I died, someone would find them and understand what these years had been like. Or maybe they'd just be thrown away, unread, unimportant. Either way, writing them helped. That's what mattered. I'm 68 now. It's been 3 years since that Christmas. 3 years since the handbags. 3 years of learning to live with permanent absence. Liam is 40. Emily is 38. Olivia is 3. Oliver is 1. I know these facts from Karen, who still seems to function as an unofficial news service for the old neighborhood. I don't ask her for updates, but she volunteers them occasionally, and I don't stop her. I know Liam got promoted at work. I know they bought a bigger house. I know Olivia started preschool. These are facts about strangers, people who share my DNA but not my life, and I'm okay with that. Not happy about it. Not at peace with it exactly, but okay. I have my life, small, quiet, but mine. I have friends, activities, purpose. Rusty, who's now an old man cat, still purring on my lap every evening. I have the support group, where we mark each other's anniversaries, the length of time since we've seen or heard from our children. I'm at 3 years. Others are at 5, 10, 20. We're a community of people society doesn't know how to acknowledge. Parents without children. Grandparents without grandchildren. People loving people who don't love us back. But we love each other. We show up for each other. We remind each other that being rejected by our children doesn't define our worth. And slowly, painfully, I'm building a life around that truth. My name is Lauren. I'm 68 years old. My son ignored me on Christmas 3 years ago and spent $16,000 on handbags for his in-laws instead. When I objected, he cut me off completely. He has 2 children I've never met and likely never will meet. When we crossed paths by accident, he told his daughter I was just someone he used to know. I've spent 3 years learning that love isn't always reciprocated, that being someone's mother doesn't guarantee being valued, that you can do everything right and still lose. But I'm still here, still finding reasons to get up every morning, still believing life has meaning even when it looks nothing like what I'd imagined. This is my story. This is my survival. This is my proof that you can live through the worst rejection imaginable and still find moments of joy, purpose, connection. It's not the story I wanted to tell. It's not the life I wanted to live, but it's mine, and I'm learning to accept it. If you're dealing with estrangement, know this. The pain doesn't disappear, but you can learn to carry it. You can build a life that has meaning despite the hurt. You're not alone. I'm still here, still fighting, still surviving. And so are thousands of others who understand exactly what this feels like. Share this story. Subscribe to Lindsay Stories. Let people know that family abandonment is real and devastating and more common than anyone wants to admit. Thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing. Thank you for making space for stories like mine that don't have happy endings but need to be told anyway. That's everything. Before I end this story, there's one final truth I need to share. Something I've learned over these 3 years that might help others who are walking this same painful road. The question everyone asks, sometimes out loud, more often in their eyes, is, what did you do wrong? Because society wants to believe that estrangement has a clear cause, that if a child cuts off contact, the parent must have done something to deserve it. Must have been abusive or neglectful or toxic in some way that justifies the separation. It's more comfortable to believe that than to accept that sometimes good parents lose their children anyway. I've spent 3 years asking myself that question. What did I do wrong? Was I too demanding? Too needy? Did I make Liam feel guilty for building his own life? Was there some moment, some conversation, some action that pushed him away? Dr. Chen helped me understand that while self-reflection is healthy, endless self-blame is not. Sometimes, she said, the issue isn't what you did. It's who you are versus who they need you to be. And those two things don't always align. Emily's family is wealthy, well-connected, socially prominent. They can offer Liam things I never could: networking opportunities, social status, the kind of lifestyle he and Emily want for themselves and their children. I'm a retired teacher. I live modestly. I don't have connections or wealth or the ability to buy $8,000 handbags as casual Christmas gifts. Maybe that's part of why I was replaced by Patricia. Not just because Emily preferred her own mother. That's natural and expected. But because Patricia represents a world Liam wants to be part of. A world where luxury items are normal gifts. Where connections matter. Where appearances are everything. I represent his past. His modest beginnings. The life he had before he married into money and status. Maybe I'm a reminder of something he wants to forget. I don't know if that's true. I'll probably never know for certain what goes through Liam's mind when he thinks about me, if he thinks about me at all. But understanding that the estrangement might not be about something I did wrong helps. It doesn't make it hurt less, but it makes it less about my failure and more about his choices. He chose status over authenticity. He chose his wife's family over his own mother. He chose to erase me rather than maintain a relationship that didn't fit the image of the life he wanted to project. Those were his choices, not my failures. I also want to address something for anyone watching this who's dealing with estrangement. The guilt of feeling relieved sometimes. Because here's a truth I'm almost ashamed to admit. There are days when I feel relief that I don't have to try anymore. Days when not having to navigate the awkwardness of being tolerated but not truly welcomed feels easier than constantly hoping for more. The emotional exhaustion of always being the one reaching out, always being the one making effort, always being disappointed, that's gone now. And while the absence hurts, there's something simpler about acceptance than about constant hoping and failing. That doesn't mean I don't miss him. It doesn't mean I wouldn't take him back if he genuinely wanted to repair our relationship. But it means I've found a strange kind of peace in no longer having to pretend that scraps of attention are enough, in no longer having to minimize my hurt to avoid being labeled as difficult or demanding. I get to be honest now about how much this hurts. I don't have to protect Liam's feelings by pretending his abandonment is acceptable. And there's power in that honesty, even if it comes at the cost of the relationship. Another thing I've learned: estrangement changes how you view every relationship. I'm more cautious now, more aware that people can leave, that love isn't always permanent, that the people closest to you can become strangers overnight. It's made me appreciate the relationships that have lasted, the friends who've stuck around, the support group members who show up every Tuesday, my cat, who can't leave even if he wanted to. But it's also made me afraid sometimes. Afraid to invest too deeply, afraid to need anyone too much, afraid that anyone I love could decide I'm not worth the effort and just leave. Dr. Chen calls this a protective mechanism. My psyche trying to prevent future hurt by keeping everyone at arm's length. We're working on it. Slowly learning to trust again. To believe that not everyone is like Liam, that some people stay. It's hard work. Probably the hardest work I've ever done. Harder than teaching second graders. Harder than surviving widowhood. Harder than anything I ever imagined I'd have to do at this stage of my life. But I'm doing it. Because the alternative, closing myself off completely, refusing to connect with anyone ever again, that's not surviving. That's just existing. And I want more than existence. Last month, something small but significant happened. A new member joined our support group. A man in his 70s named Robert, whose 3 daughters had all cut contact with him 5 years ago after he remarried following his wife's death. He was devastated, raw, in the early stages of grief that I remember so well, and I found myself able to help him, to share what I'd learned, to offer perspective from someone further along in the process. "Does it get better?" he asked during his second meeting. "It gets different," I told him honestly. "The acute pain fades. The constant crying stops. You learn to function, but you don't forget, and it doesn't stop hurting completely. So there's no hope? There's always hope. But you can't build your life around hope that might never materialize. You have to build your life around what actually exists right now. And then if reconciliation happens, it's a gift. But if it doesn't, you've still built something worth living." He nodded slowly. And I realized that while I couldn't save my relationship with Liam, I could maybe help others survive their own estrangements. That felt like purpose, like meaning extracted from pain. I started volunteering more with the support group, co-facilitating meetings, reaching out to new members, sharing resources I'd found helpful. It didn't fix anything. Liam was still gone. My grandchildren were still strangers. But it gave my experience meaning beyond just personal tragedy. It connected my pain to a larger community, made my story part of a bigger narrative about survival and resilience. And that helped, more than I'd expected it to. So here's what I want anyone dealing with estrangement to know. You will survive this, even when it feels impossible, even when the pain seems unbearable, even when you can't imagine your life without this person in it. You will survive. It won't look like what you wanted. It won't feel like victory. It will be messy and painful and complicated, but you will survive. And eventually, you'll find moments of joy again, small ones at first. A good meal, a funny movie, a friend's laughter, a cat's purr. Those moments will increase. Slowly. The joy won't erase the pain, but it will exist alongside it. And that's survival. Not happiness, not healing, just survival. And sometimes, survival is enough. My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 68 years old. My son abandoned me 3 years ago over $8,000 handbags. I have 2 grandchildren I'll likely never meet. I've been reduced to just someone he used to know. But I'm still here, still breathing, still finding reasons to keep going, still learning that being rejected by the person you love most doesn't have to destroy you completely. It changes you. It scars you. It hurts you in ways that never fully heal. But it doesn't have to destroy you. I'm living proof of that. Imperfect. Hurting, but still here. And if I can do it, so can you. Share this story. Subscribe to Lindsay Stories. Let people know that family estrangement is real, painful, and survivable. Thank you for listening to my story, for witnessing my pain, for making space for a narrative that doesn't have a happy ending but needs to be told anyway. That's everything.